What did the founders believe about government taxing your labor? Let's hear it, in their own words. Thomas Jefferson warned, "Taxation without belief is tyranny." James Madison, the father of the Constitution, made it clear, a just government protects your property. And so they wrote it into law. The Fifth Amendment protects your property, including your wages. Today, wages are taxed before you even receive them. No consent, no compensation. The founders didn't design a system to tax your labor. They designed a shield to protect it. They called it liberty. We should too.
The last line of the Fifth Amendment basically says, "Nor shall your private property, which includes your money, be taken for public use without just compensation." Well, if you think about that, having your property, your money taken from you be the same thing for public use without just compensation, that's the definition of taxation. So, did our founders not understand what they were saying? And we know that that clause has just been focused on eminent domain, but it says more than just eminent domain there. It actually defines taxation. It, of course, defines socialism and prohibits socialism, but it also defines taxation and prohibits taxation. So, does that amendment, as a further declaratory and restrictive clause, does it cancel out all of the tax clauses in the Constitution? I would have to say yes. So how do we fund government? Article 1, Section 8 gives the Congress the power to create money. Now, I had a personal conversation with Stephen Moore quite a few years ago. He was chief economics advisor for President Trump for 4 years in the first term. And I said, "Stephen, if you were to successfully enforce the nonprofit status of the Federal Reserve System, that could entirely wipe out the federal debt and the federal liability and eliminate the need for taxation. Because, as Tucker Carlson said before he was fired, when $1 trillion out of thin air is created, why are we being taxed for that?" Well, the trillions of dollars that are created by the Federal Reserve System, every trillion belongs as profit to the Treasury. And the big lie that we've all been absorbing is that those trillions of dollars are supposed to be returned to the Federal Reserve. They're not. Those trillions are supposed to be profit for the Treasury, which is profit for the United States of America, and not converted to tax debt. That's the big lie, and it's simple. We need to understand. So, Charlie, what I'm trying to say to you is that we need to understand, and we need to be able to communicate to people that according to the Constitution, that Fifth Amendment, no taxation whatsoever, including property tax, is constitutional or legal or even necessary. And like I said, if we could enforce the nonprofit status of the Federal Reserve retroactively, the amount of money and property that would come back to the Treasury would not only exceed the federal debt, but I believe it would exceed the federal liability by far. And instead of tax liability and tax debt, we would have dividends coming back to us and tax returns coming back to we, the taxpayers. So, Charlie, the message today is, hey, we don't need any tax. Ron Paul was kind of scratching the surface of that. We don't need to be taxed. We need to understand the Federal Reserve enforces nonprofit status, and that eliminates 100% of all taxation needs right down to the local sales tax level for a gallon of gas, or for a Twinkie or anything else. Property tax, sales tax, we don't need any taxes whatsoever if we follow the Constitution. And I encourage people to go and get a copy of this, put it on their coffee table. This is fresh off the press, and you can get that at 7discoveries.com. The number 7discoveries.com. And please email me, Charlie, and let's get together and talk about this, okay? Thanks for listening, everybody.